Aboro, Aboye, Abosheshe, and Ekabo. Welcome to another stream of the Ifa Orisha Community Discussion show. And today, our topic is time. But before I get into the topic for today, I would like to recite an Oriki to open today's stream. All right? And the essay Ifa, or the Oriki rather, is Ejiogbe. Ejiogbe, Ejiogbe, Ejiogbe. Mobeyi, Kiegbe, Mikimi, Eniyi. Kie Egbe, Mikimi, and Ola. Ifa, Kifa, Ki Niyi, Koja, Ejiogbe. Ejiogbe, Eni Baba, Bogbonwon. Ki Bogbo, Eniya, Kakiri, Agbaye, Barajo. Kiwon Maboy, Mi, Enija. Kiegbe Mi, Leke Ota. Kienle, Kiodi. Kiema, Boemi, Enija, Kiema, Boemi, Leke Isoro Lojo. Bogbo, Eni Bogbo, Ojo Ayemi. Kiema, Bwe Ire Komi, Enig, Babogbo, Tabi, Kiemagbe, Fumi. Asher, Asher, Asher. All right, and as I mentioned before, today's subject is time. All right. The first thing when we hear the word time, we always think about what do you mean time? What's the relevance of time? Well, all of the streams that I've been doing recently are eventually all going to accumulate where we're going to see the real significance of all these different topics. All right? But the issue of time is very important for all activities. All right? We live in a society where everything is structured around time. If you have a job, you have to be there on time. When it's lunch, it's at a particular time. If you have an exam, if you attend school, all the preparation that you do to get your degree, or to get your O levels or A levels, everything is time related. The exams are time related. Okay? These are just some examples. All right? But I'm going to start now. I'm going to read two essay Ifas. One that relates to planning, and the other one that relates to time. All right? The first essay Ifa that I'm going to read today comes from Ejiogbe. All right? And I'm going to read it in English. All right? So I'm not going to read Yoruba. It is from youth that a cow has honor in the manger. It is from youth that a prince has honor on top of a horse. Cast Ifa divination for Ato. Methodical planning is the father of all organization. Ifa, I know not how to plan. It is that which you plan for me that I consider good and proper. right, so this essay Ifa shows the importance of planning as an individual, but also it shows the importance for us to have an understanding of what is the designs for our life, what our destiny is. So when it mentions Ifa knowing what is good for you, it is speaking particularly about a person's destiny. All right. The other essay Ifa that I'm going to read is from Iwori, Owori, or Iwori, Eleri. All right. And this essay Ifa speaks about gratitude. All right, which is a very, very important part of our practice in this tradition. The essay Ifa reads, if a person chooses to be an ingrate, allow him or her to taste wickedness. He would remember the pain, not kindness. Cast divination for Iwori on a business trip to the market of Eleri. Eleri, I am grateful to you. Kindness must be appreciated. I am grateful. All right. Now, this essay Ifa speaks about gratitude. All right. The essay Ifa mentions a person making a business trip to the market. So one of the key elements here is that market that the person made the trip to. And you would understand it as I get into today's lesson further. And by the way, Ileri, when translated from Yoruba to English, means one who laughs frivolously. All right, which would mean, or which would imply, that the business trip to the market was successful, and that because the person has gratitude, which is an essential element in everything that we do, right, we would understand as I go further the relationship between what we refer to as market and market days. All right. Normally, what we do each day is we offer prayers or Iba, which shows that we are giving thanks and appreciation to the energies that are responsible for bringing into our lives all the good things of life. Right? The words we use in Yoruba is Bogboiri. All right? Now, today, all right, which is Tuesday, the second or the third day of the week, in the market days, today would be Oshe Ogun, or on the Igbo calendar, today would be Afo Day, which is also the day of Ogun. And in this case, where we're talking about the market days, Afo represents the earth. All right? And if we know anything about Ogun, we would know that there was a time when he was banished into the forest. And he lived there, where he had very little contact with human beings. Right? And that essay or that story goes on to say that it was Oshun who went into the forest, found Ogun, and brought him back to civilization. All right? But that, we would explore that particular essay at some point in the future. So let me move forward to today's lesson. So in the tradition, we have what is called the Oshe days. All right, we have Oshe Obatala, we have Oshe Ifa, we have Oshe Ogun, and we have Oshe Shango. All right, and those 4 Oshe days make up what is considered to be a week. That week is based on the market days. All right. Now, These are the days where we venerate and we recognize the various energies. So even though I mentioned Obatala Day, on that particular day, which is AKD, which controls the element of fire, the Iyamis, Obatala, or Orishanla, the Iyamis are also reverenced on that day. The Igungun, Obaluaye, and Oriri. All right. Now, in different parts of West Africa, they would have deities sometimes that we are unfamiliar with. And in different parts, they would probably appease different energies on these particular days. So there is no standard energies that I recognize on these days, but generally the ones that I called earlier is the ones that is mainly recognized by all the different lineages. All right. On the Oshe Ifa Day, Eshu Odara is also appeased. Right. It's the Oshe Ifa Day, so of course Ifa would be appeased. Oshun, Egbe, Aje, and Olokun, or some would say Aje Olokun. Yemonja is recognized by some to be appeased on that day, Odu and Kori. All right. Then, and on that day that is called Ifa Day, on the Yoruba calendar or market day, is recognized as Ori by the Igbos, or the Ori market day. And the element that controls that particular market day is the element of water. All right. The next day of the Oshe calendar is Oshe Ogun, which is the Afo market day, which is the earth element. Ogun is not the only divinity that is appeased on that day. Ija, by some groups in Nigeria, Oshiosi, Orisha Oko, Erile, and Ajao. All right. The next day on the calendar, or the last of the 4 days, is Oshe Shango, or by the Igbos, it's called Enko. And the element that controls this particular day is the element of air. All right. Now, Shango, it's Oshe Shango, or Jakuta. Yemonja by some, because I mentioned Yemonja on the same Oshe Ifa. So some people appeases Yemonja on Oshe Ifa and others on Oshe Shango. All right. Oya, which is always related to Shango. Aganju, Obaluaye, which, and Shakpana, Ibeji, and Oba. All right. Now, these 4 days makes up 1 week. All right. And this is something that we must discuss later on when we start discussing the communities, we start discussing business. I would explain how these cycle of the 4 elements can be used to ensure that you have a successful and progressive business, because these are the cycles that has been used by our ancestors for thousands of years. And because of their understanding of these cycles, they were able to be extremely successful. Now, keep in mind that in West Africa or Nigeria, most of the societies are agrarian societies where they do a lot of agriculture and a lot of planting. So the markets are very, very important, because this is where most of the community take their goods and produce to have it sold. All right. So because it's an agrarian society, basically what they use is a lunar calendar. So once you have 4 days making a week, in order to make up a complete lunar cycle, which is 28 and a third days, you would have to have 7 weeks in each month. So basically, what I am saying is what we have is a 4-day week and a 7-week month. The way we have been taught it in the diaspora is you have 7 days in a week. And if you're looking at a lunar month with the 28 and a third days, then you are going to have 4 weeks to make one complete lunar cycle, which will be the 28 days. So we have been taught 7 days a week, and for the lunar cycle, 4 weeks to make the 28 days. So 4 times 7 will give, or 7 times 4, sorry, would give us the 28. But in the traditional West African calendar, it's the opposite. It is 4 days make 1 week and 7 weeks make 1 month, which works out to the 28 days. Why is this important? It is important because if you're engaging in agriculture, you have to know when is the correct time to plant. All right, so it goes back to the first essay Ifa that I read that spoke about planning and the importance of planning. All right, because they made it clear that methodical planning is the father of all. Forgive me for that technical break there, right? I had a call coming in. Right, so in the West, we use a 7-day calendar making up the week. And then we have 4 weeks that will make up a lunar month. In our tradition, what we have is 4 days to make 1 week and 7 weeks to make a month. All right? And the last thing I was saying is that this is an essential part of planning for any agricultural society. Right? Once you understand the cycle of the moon, then you would be able to have very good yielding crops. All right? So, what we are going to do today is we are going to look at the details of the concept of time. All right? And one of the things that are required that a person must know and understand as a devotee is the observation of the Orisha calendar. All right? So it is very, very important for us to know that. We also must know too, even before we get initiated, how to recite particular orikis, like to the ancestors, to Eshu, and also we have to know how to say the orikis for our Ori. All right? Also, we must know how to perform basic divination, as well as we must know how to offer Omi, which is water, Oti, which is alcohol, how to divine using Obi, and also how to offer palm oil. All of these are essential things that we must know. All right? So now I'm going to give a history of time. All right? And we're going to look at some of the details of how time is viewed in the West here. And then we're going to get back to how it is used in Isheshe. All right? The solar calendar is the way that we measure time in the West. It is based on the solar calendar. A solar calendar is a calendar whose dates indicate the seasons or almost equivalently, the apparent position of the sun relative to the stars. All right? The first instrument that was invented to tell time was something called the Moorish Sundial. All right? It used shadows to estimate time. It was designed so that the shadow of the gnomon, all right, and the gnomon is the vertical triangular piece of the sundial, all right, is consistent at each hour from one day to the next. This allowed the hours to be marked on the sundial using a single scale. All right, so that gives a little bit of the history of time. Now, many people would say that, they don't believe in astrology and horoscope, but astrology is not horoscope and it's not related to horoscope. And whether you believe in astrology or not doesn't change the fact that it is a science and that this science controls and affects the lives of everyone. All right? And the proof, because I'm going to show you now, the proof of the influence of astrology on our daily activities. Right? We just spoke about the Moorish sundial and the use of the sun to determine time. Now we are going to look at the actual days of the week and how they got their name. And then we're going to have a chance to see how astrology and the planets and the stars affects our everyday activity. All right? On the calendars that we use, all right, the first day of the week is Sunday. And we would ask, how did we come up with the name Sunday? All right? But the name Sunday is the day of the sun. So what they did is they just reversed that, the day of the sun, and put sun in front and the day behind. The Latin name for Sunday was Shamsun. And from the word Shamsun, we got the word Sunday. All right? So Sunday is in fact the day of the sun. All right? In Spanish, it is called Domingo. All right? Because Spanish does give you a little idea of the planets that are associated to the days. Sunday, being the day of the sun, is associated to the sun. Okay, which is a fixed star in our galaxy. All right, the sun is the brightest star and it's also a fixed star. The next day of the week that we are familiar with, which is the first day of work for most people, is called Monday. The original name for Monday was Mundaig, or Cam in Latin. All right? In Spanish, it is Lunes or Lunes. Right? And of course, we would know the word Lunes is related to the word Luna. And everybody knows that the word Luna is related to the moon. All right? So, Monday is related to the moon. All right? And of course, we're going to be looking at both sun and moon in relation to calendars, because we have The solar calendar, which was first used in Egypt, the first device was created by the Moors, that is called the Moorish Sundial. And the moon calendar has been used for a very long time, but the first one that we know of that was recorded in history was used by the Egyptians and the Babylonians. All right? The next day of the week that we talk about is Tuesday. All right? And in Latin, the name is Tia, T-I-A. All right? And this was supposed to be a female deity of war. All right? Because it's associated to war, it's associated to the planet Mars. All right? In Spanish, right, it is called T-I-W, right? Martes, all right, in Spanish, and it's associated to Mars. But in doing the research, I came across some very interesting information which I'm going to share. The name Tia is an old Roman female deity of war. What I discovered is that every pope, when he's coronated, he is crowned with a crown that is called a tiara, that is spelled T-I-A-R-A. Okay? Which I find to be almost like a contradiction, because normally we associate the popes to being men of peace. But if they are men of peace, the question now becomes, why would they wear a crown that is representative of a female deity that is associated to war? So that is something that everybody could look at, right? You could investigate that further. But let me go on with the weeks. But that was just one of the interesting things I found. The next day of the week is what we normally call Wednesday. All right? Wednesday is associated to Deice Mercury, which is the god of thought. All right? In Spanish, it's called Mercules, right? And in the Norse, among the Norse people, it was called Woden's Day, right? Woden. So, from the word Woden, I believe that is the closest one that we got to the term Wednesday. Wednesday is actually Woden's Day. Thursday, and Woden, by the way, is associated to Mercules, which is the planet Mercury. So Wednesday is associated to the planet Mercury. Thursday, right, is associated to the planet Jupiter, right? And also it is related to the Norse god that is called Thor, Thor, the same cartoon character we see with the mallet or the hammer in his hand. All right? Now, in the Latin side of it, Jupiter is referred to as Jedi, as in Return of the Jedi, the Star Wars movie. And it's also related to Juvis. All right? And Juvis, or Jedi, was supposedly the god that was related to the wisdom of medical science, health, wealth, and progress. All right? Jupiter, and here in its original form was Ju-Piter, or Saint Peter, or to. All the same person. All right? In Spanish, it's jueves. All right? And we know that in Spanish, J is actually pronounced as H. Right? So this jueves here would be related to Juves. All right? So Thursday or Thursday is associated to Jupiter. All right? The symbol that is associated to St. Peter as well as Jupiter, right? That is somehow tied in with the same thing that I mentioned earlier with the tiara, has the symbol of cross keys, which is also associated to St. Peter. All right? Friday, right? In Spanish, it's Viernes. All right? And the old Latin and Norse names would have been Fria or Frigga. Frigga. All right? And in Latin, that same term, Fria or Frigga, translates to Lady of Love. All right? Or woman. Or God of the creation of sons. Unity, music, peace, and enjoyment. All right? Now, in Trinidad, many of the elders would have referred to a person as a Frigga. And now, because we have a little insight as to its association to Venus, which has to do with pleasure and love and music, that term would have been associated to a person who just only wanted to be happy and didn't care if Sunday fall on a Monday, and all they wanted to do was enjoy themselves. So such a person would have been referred to as a Frigga. So that is where that term comes from. It wasn't used as an obscene term, as a curse, but it was used as a way of identifying a person who lived a particular lifestyle. A carefree, don't give a damn type of life. All right? And now we reach to the last day of the week, which is Saturday. In Spanish, the term is sábado. All right? Saturday is associated to Saturn. So it's really Saturn Day. All right? And Saturn is associated to restriction, disappointment, sorrow, and delay, because that is the nature of the planet. All right? So many people would say, oh, I don't believe in astrology, but it controls you, because the days of the week is named for planets and has associations to planet. And based on that, we have a 7-day week. All right? Later on, not in today's lecture, but in the future, we would look at the cycle of 7 and the importance. We would look at the cycle of 4 and the importance. And we would understand how all of these things affect our activities, so that when we plan things, that we could make the maximum use of the laws that govern nature and the cycles of time. All right? So we're going a little further now into the issue of time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the units that basically make up what we call time, and how these units are used on a daily basis when we have activities, and we talk about you have to be somewhere for 8 a.m. or you have to be there for 2 p.m. or you have to be there for 6 o'clock or whatever. All right, the smallest unit of time that we know of is called radians. All right, a radian 1 radian is equal to 57.2958. When we look at the word radian in Latin, it means shining brightly. So words such as radiant and radiation and all of that comes from the word radiance. All right. Now, a radian is an angle subtended at the center of a circle by an arch equal in length to the radius. All right. Folks, you might say this is unimportant and it is irrelevant. Please pay attention, because as the lessons continue, I am going to show you how all of these things play a significant role in determining your success. All right, the other word, the radian is denoted by the symbol rad. It is the unit of angle in the international system of unit and the standard unit of an angular measure. So when I told you it is 57.29578, that would be degrees. All right. The next word we're going to look at is the word degrees. All right. Normally in common use, when we hear the term degree, we associate it with temperature. All right. But the term degree, actually, when you go into the origin of the word in Latin, it means a step or a grade. Right? And this here is the definition. A degree is a step, a stair also, a position in a hierarchy. The degree is a planar unit of angular measurement equal in magnitude to 1/360th of a complete revolution. All right? So every circle is 360 degrees. One single unit of that 360 is what represents a degree. All right? The next word we're going to look at is the word seconds. All right, so we're coming closer to terms that everybody knows. So a second would mean next in rank when you translate it from Latin. It means next in rank. All right, because we know in the number system we always start at 1. So the next number in rank would be 2. All right, so that is what we call second. All right, seconds is the unit of time in the international system of units, and it represents 1/60th of a minute. Okay, so seconds represent 1/60th of a minute. So the next unit we're going to look at is minute. All right, the term minute simply from Latin means chopped small. You got that? The term minute simply means chopped small. So mind you, we all know that the word minute and the word minute is spelled the same way. Why is that? The term minute means small. However, something being small is one type of definition. But that small part that you're seeing most likely would have been a part of a larger amount. All right, so now let me give the exact worded definition. A minute is the 60th part of an hour. All right, or 1/60th of an hour. All right, or degree of a circle. All right, it is a measure of time. All right. Now, the same minute, as I said before, it means chop small from Latin, right? Minute, which could also mean little, small. All right. And of course, the past participle of minore, which means to lessen or to diminish. All right. Now, the same word minute is also used to describe a written record of a proceeding, of a meeting, of a corporation, society, etc. Now, most people who have been involved in organization would be familiar with the minutes that are kept in a meeting. A meeting progresses at a certain rate where everything on the agenda is discussed, one point at a time. So that would automatically mean that the minutes is going to be recorded as the agenda progresses one point at a time. So when you attend a future meeting, all of the details, close that up, please. All of the details of the last meeting could be looked at and reviewed a point at a time. And then you would be able to look at the same minutes to determine who made the suggestion, who supported the suggestion, etc., etc. All right? So the term minutes is used in these three different ways. All right? The first time it was used was in the 14th century. And then later on in the 14th century, it was used with a modified definition. And then in the 15th century, that's where they introduced the idea of it being something chopped up. All right? Now, the next word we're going to look at is the term hours. What is an hour? All right, so we're going to do a little bit of etymology now. The word hour, H-O-U-R, is actually the same word Horus, but using a process called metathesis, the letters in the word will rearrange to create a new word. The method or the device that was used to create that word is called metathesis. That is where you rearrange the order of particular letters in the word. All right, so you could make a note of that and you could investigate it. It is a process called metathesis. All right, now the word hour or Horus was the sun god. All right, the sun or risen savior. All right, now Horus represented the rising sun in the temple. That same rising sun reaches its high point at 12 noon, which is referred to as Lucius or Luke, right? Or light, because the sun is brightest and most radiant at midday. All right, and the third step would be sunset, and set, S-E-T-H, is referred to as the prince of darkness, or Satan, or Satan. All right, now hour is a unit of time, of course, and it would represent 1/20th of what we refer to as a day. All right, so the last thing we're going to discuss on time is the day. All right, what is a day? All right, the term day came from the Old English word daeg. Okay, spelled D-A-E-G. Right? And daeg represented 12 hours in its original concept. So, because normally, or at least back then, the concept was what we would refer to as day would be the period when we had light. So a day in the early times was considered to be only 12 hours. It is later on that the concept of a day being 24 hours was used. All right? So what we were just discussing about the definition of hours, where we talk about sunrise, it reaching its highest point, and sun setting, that portion of hours was the only thing they considered back then. That's why a day was referred to as just 12 hours. All right? But now, we know we have what's called daytime, which in reality only was in reference to the light. And now we have what we call night time. That is where we have darkness. All right? So now I'm going to go a little further and we're going to talk a little bit about lunar calendars and lunar concepts. All right? The old calendars, right? Many of them were basically lunar calendars, right? As a result of which, in order to calculate a year with the 28th and a third day, one would have had to use, instead of 12, which is the solar year, one would have had to use a calendar with 13 months. All right? The old Roman calendars had 10 months. All right? And as time progressed, you had months being added to the calendar in order to make up for the 365 days. All right? Now, the year, I think most people have heard of what we call April Fools. The concept and the term April Fools came into existence after, for many years, when the calendar had changed from March being the first month of the year to everyone celebrating January as the first month. The persons who maintained the old calendars was thought of as foolish. So because they would still celebrate the new year in March, they were considered to be foolish. All right? However, in all of the ancient calendars, the 21st of April ushered in the new year. The name April come from the Latin aperio, which means I open. And that is the beginning of the natural new year, or what is referred to as vernal equinox. All right? On the Hebrew calendar, the time of the vernal equinox is counted as the month of Nisan. On the Igbo calendar, it is Embu or Onwa Embu, meaning Onwa meaning month, Embu being the name of the month. All right. April on the Jewish calendar is Ayar, and in the Igbo calendar it's Abu. All right, and we could go on and we could call all the months, but the point is the calendars, in order to get the total amount as close as possible to the solar calendar, the additional month had to be added in, right? The Roman people, of course, you had Numa Pompilius, who was the second king of Rome. He improved the calendar by adding January and February. This would have been around 713 and 673 BCE. All right, which made the year 355 days. Before this, it was 10 months in the early Roman calendar. It was established by Romulus around 753 BCE. This was a purely lunar cycle, which did not correspond to the solar, as I was just explaining. So what they did, they added January and February, but because March into April, March 21st, would have been the beginning of the new year, depending on the extra days they would have fitted a month between February and March that they refer to as the intercalaris month, which would have allowed them to make the adjustments to have 13 months to make it a complete year to match the 365 days. All right. Now, January was called Ianuros, right? Because remember, J was introduced a lot later on, so there was no J. So at the time, what we call January today would have been Ianuros. What we call February today would have been Februarius. All right, and then they would have had the intercalcularius month. Then you would have had what we call March, which is Morius. We would have had April, which was Aprilis. We would have had May, which is Mois, Maius. And then we would have had what we know today as June would have been Iunius. July would have been Iulius or Quintilis. And of course, the term Quintilis, right, would have meant 5, because July was in fact the 5th month of the year. August would have come from the name Augustus. It was called Sextilis, which means, of course, it would have been the 6th month of the year, because sex, S-E-X, is the same as S-I-X, which is 6. All right. September would have been the same name, September, because sept means 7. October would have been October, because oct means 8. November would have been November, because novem means 8. And December, which was decem, it means 10. All right. So if December was the 10th, January and February would have been the 11th and 12th month, and then the intercalcularis month would have been the 13th month. All right. So if in our minds we hear terms like October, September, November, December, and we know that these represent numbers, and the numbers they represent does not correspond with the way we count the months from January to December, that is the reason why. All right. So first, the Romans had the Julian calendar, and later on, the Gregorian calendar in 1582. All right. So we're running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close off for today, and we're going to take it up from next Tuesday. All right. And one of the things that I'm going to discuss, I'm going to give you all a little preview of what's the next show, so that you all could probably do a little homework and prepare. What we're going to look at on the next show is something called the International Conference held at Washington, where a prime, for the purpose of fixing a prime meridian and a universal day. And this conference was held in October of 1884. Right? At that conference, the meridian was moved from Denver, Colorado, in the US, to the Greenwich in England in 1884. This is why today the 0 point on the maps is now the Greenwich Meridian. That was decided in 1884. So you all could do the research, and then next week when I come back, we're going to start with that point, and then we're going to move forward. We're going to look at history, the effects of that conference. We're also going to look at how it affects the maps and the measurement of time. All right. So it was great having everyone here today on this show and on the subject of time. Time is very important because it is what determines how we plan and how we make progress. All right. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today on the show and for being a part of the stream. All right. Remember, you do good for yourself. You do bad for yourself. May Oludumare bless you. May he bless your family. May he bless your community. May he bless your village, your town, and the country by extension. And with that, I would like to say Odabo and see you next show.